Hi, I'm Rebecca Balcarcel, and I can help you revise your essay. First of all, congratulations. If you're actually thinking about revising, then you already wrote the essay. Hooray! So you're not procrastinating, at least not completely. All right, so how do you revise your essay? First of all, look at your format. Every college essay, especially, needs to be in a particular format. So you can't just throw the text on the page single-spaced if the format requires double spacing. MLA, for example, Modern Language Association, they require double spacing, they require a header that's got your name and the teacher's name and the date and the class, they require page numbers, but not just numbers, numbers with your name next to it. So different kinds of formats require different, particular ways of writing out your text. Make sure you're following those. No reason to lose points on something as simple as formatting. All right, moving on. Look at your title. Is the title something like Assignment 1 or Essay 2? Rewrite that to be a creative, interesting, engaging title. Number 3, do you have a thesis in this essay? That means, do you have a sentence that sums up the point that you're trying to make? You need a specific thesis that makes an assertion that shows some deep thinking on your part. So a strong thesis is going to try to tell how or why. If you have a thesis that simply says what something is, for example, so-and-so is the main character of such and such movie. Well, that's not analytical, it's not deep enough, it's not thoughtful enough. You need a thesis that delves deep into the subject matter and asserts an interpretation or asserts a position that you're taking. And it needs to be clear. So it needs to be detailed, it needs to be clear, it needs to be deep, assertive. Now this is what the whole rest of the essay should prove. So the next tip I have for you is, does every paragraph support that thesis? And by support, I just mean, does every paragraph provide some evidence that that thesis must be reasonable, must be true, has to be a logical position to take. So check each of your body paragraphs. If some of them don't make a point all by themselves, consider combining them so that you have one point made in each paragraph. There should be one piece of evidence per paragraph. If you're quoting, you might think in terms of one quote per paragraph, although that's not always going to be the right thing to do. If you have several quotes that all support one point, then they should go together in a paragraph and just be a beefy paragraph. All right, now if you're writing about literature or about a film, then you'll need quotes from the film or from the poem or the story to be your evidence. So you should, again, have a major quote per paragraph. Each paragraph should make a point, and that point should explain how the thesis makes sense. So the thesis governs everything. All right, now about those quotes. For a strong essay, you need to make sure that your quotes are not just dropped in there. That means that none of your quotes should just be standing alone. They all need to have a little on-ramp, and your on-ramp is mentioning who the quote is by or what work this quote is from. A signal phrase is sometimes an English teacher word for it, that you have a phrase like, according to Johnson, comma, open quote, and then whatever Johnson said. So you need a little phrase like that to be the on-ramp for your quote. And you may even need an off-ramp for the quote, depending, to explain what the quote's significance really is. So the quote needs to prove something, it's there for a reason, and you need to make readers very aware of exactly what that reason is. So in the sentence right before the quote, sentence right after the quote, or perhaps the sentence that includes the quote, tell the reader what the quote means. What is the significance of this quote? What does it prove? What does it explain? Don't let the reader just figure it out. Say it. Say it clearly. Just come out and say it. All right, so the quote won't just be dropped in. It'll have a little on-ramp, and it may even have an off-ramp. The next thing you need to think about is your conclusion. Now, your conclusion should not Absolutely not. Just rephrase your thesis. Especially, it should not retype your thesis verbatim. You need to say this all in completely different words, draw more or less the same conclusion, but not worded really the same at all. So to be sophisticated, write your conclusion as if it is summing up the point. It's not going to bring in new evidence or new perspectives. It needs to just sum up what you've said and restate your main point without using the exact language that your thesis statement uses. All right, so that'll make a strong conclusion. Now, you're also going to think about your content. Mostly I've been talking here about your structure. So let's move on to content. Your content, I can't help you with as much because I don't know what your paper is about, but make sure that your content goes deep enough. For a successful essay, you need to have some ideas of your own in there. And if you don't have any ideas of your own, then you run the risk of writing a shallow paper that's more of a report and doesn't do enough analyzing or enough interpreting of your own. So only you know whether your paper has got that really good content. But if you feel like your paper's kind of thin, then revision is the time to add something to it, to think a little deeper, and make sure you have a meaty paper that really says something and says something of your own. Okay, now let's talk about sentence structure. Let's say you've got great content and you've done everything I mentioned before, but now what about on the sentence level and on the word level? Okay, first of all, you're going to need your wording to be in a professional tone. So you can't have slang and you can't have a lot of contractions. Instead of can't, go ahead and write out cannot. If this is an academic essay for school, and especially for college, go ahead and write out those contractions. Make sure you don't have some silly mistakes like there versus there, T-H-E-R-E versus T-H-E-I-R. Also, choose strong verbs. You need to look at all your verbs, and if possible, instead of saying Johnson says, let's try states or prove something something by saying blah blah. Have some variety and stay professional. You want strong verbs, you want specific nouns, you want to vary your sentence structure. That means you want some short sentences, some long. You want to stay rational sounding. You don't want to rant. You can be energetic or passionate, but you can't bash other points of view. You have to be respectful to all sides. That's the tone of academic writing. If you were on a radio show, that would not be the tone, and it'd be perfectly fine to rant. But this is not that occasion. So in this occasion, you need to have a professional tone, and all your language should be respectful and accurate. You can't fudge the truth. You have to stay, factual, and make sure that you're conveying a voice with your wording. You want to project a voice of someone who is rational and intelligent and well-informed and who has opinions and reasons that follow from all of that good thinking that you've done. So that's the voice you want to project. Okay, so that should help you revise any college essay. And if you have specific questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments, and I'll try to answer them eventually. Good luck with your essay.